So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate. I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working class family. My mother required food assistance for periods of her life. My grandmother required Social Security help to raise me. And she raised me in part because my own mother struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life. I went to college on the GI Bill after I enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here asking to be your vice president with extraordinary gratitude for this country, for the American dream that made it possible for me to live my dreams. And most importantly, I know that a lot of you are worried about the chaos in the world and the feeling that the American dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the White House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was J.D. Vance. Yeah, this is Tim Walz's worst nightmare. Not only last night, but, nights leading up to it as well. I love this debate. I enjoyed every bit of it, last night before I ended up dozing off. I'm not gonna lie. I did fall asleep a little bit, you know what I mean? But shout out to J.D. Vance for introducing himself to the American people, taking the time to really kind of, do the groundwork, so to speak, on people being able to understand, have an understanding of him before the debate actually started. Like somebody said, J.D. won this debate already just off his introduction. I definitely I say he crushed it for sure. And he has such an incredible story, and he knows the struggle. He definitely knows how to rise above it. So salute to him for that. Now, this was one of my favorite parts of this debate. Now, also keep in mind, this all ain't gonna be in chronological order. All of it's gonna kind of be here and there, but this is my favorite part right here because J.D. Vance pretty much called out Tim Walz, saying, "Hey, I kind of feel sorry for you, man. You got to sit there and lie in order to, campaign, and the truth."
Honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was raised by a woman.
I'm sorry, y'all. Just look at Tim Walz's face. He's looking sheer panic.
Would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table in our household. I know what it's like to not be able to afford the things that you need to afford. We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just got to get back to common sense economic principles.
I'm just saying, if you look at Tampon Tim, that's the new name that's been going around. If you look at him, bro, he was over there like, save me. You know what I mean? He looked like he was looking for the right Democrat. Somebody said this was pure brilliance. President Trump made the right choice. Hey, I'm starting to believe so too. Now y'all know I rock with Vivek super heavy, but yeah, this is definitely on point. Yeah, I think he'll make a pretty dope president one day too, and he nailed it. Even 3-on-1 with Smug, and that's talking about the moderators and their biases and things of the nature, which we're gonna get to, but he just torched Tim Walz on CBS all the way through it. And this is a quote, "You both seem to be missing the fact that under Donald Trump's leadership, no new global conflict happened. Everything Iran has done has been under Kamala Harris' leadership." Yeah, let's go and check this clip out, y'all.
Senator Vance, the U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal. He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible. Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump, who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years. And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure. Now, we talk about what the sequence of events that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris. So Governor Walz can criticize Donald Trump's tweets, but effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself at home, when was the last time, I'm 40 years old, when was the last time that an American president didn't have a major conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump.
I told y'all this was a 3-on-1 situation. That's what the Democrats like to do, too. You know what I mean? They don't like to play fair. You got to have the moderators on payroll. On top of that, you got Tim Walz obviously doing what he has to do. He's conflicted, right? As JD Vance just laid out. But yeah, man, it just only get worse from here. Honestly, it does. CBS moderators just tried to get that gotcha moment by bringing up JD Vance's past comments on Trump. But his response, man. Whew.
Writing to someone in 2020, quote, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism. You're now his running mate, and you've shifted many of your policy stances to align with his. If you become vice president, why should Americans trust that you will give Donald Trump the advice he needs to hear and not just the advice he wants to hear? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out to messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration the first round if Congress was doing its job. I strongly believe, and I've been a United States Senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for senators and congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example, where I think that we could have done so much more if the Republican Congress and the Democrats in Congress had been a little bit better about how they govern the country. They were so obsessed with impeaching Donald Trump, they couldn't actually govern.
Somebody said that y'all need to get Tim Walz some emotional support ASAP. Yeah, he looked like he about one response away from losing his temper. Somebody says the bias in the vice presidential debate on CBS News is glaringly obvious. Both moderators are clearly favoring Tim Walz, giving him softer questions and repeatedly fact-checking JD Vance while allowing Walz's statement to go unchallenged. Yeah. And that's why I think, you know, subconsciously, I'm kind of taking the time to make sure that JD Vance just get off everything that it needs to say. Yeah, we're going to play a little bit of Tim Walz, you know, and we got to, you know, for the sake of being a journalist and all that, got to make sure, you know. But not right now. JD Vance demolished the moderators by lying to the audience. Check this out.
And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because
we're going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
The rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wall.
I'm sorry. Look at his face, man.
That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own leadership.
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The CBP One app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut.
We heard him. But yeah, they spent their time sitting there trying to fact check him. And you see how when he started to tell the truth, they literally had to mute the man? That should really put the people whom are, on the fence about who they voting for, the people whom are just undecided, that should really put things into perspective for you, for real. Even Chris Cuomo, y'all know he's definitely legacy media royalty. However, he's been coming to the light as of late. But he's even blasting the CBS moderators for trying to fact check JD Vance. Everyone sees through this bullshit.
When they were talking, at one point, Vance wanted to correct something about how Haitians got into this country. And he was right. And the moderators wouldn't let him correct it. It's very interesting.
Margaret, thank you.
Senator, we have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because...
We're going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check. And since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The CBP app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut.
We heard them. Trying to tell you.
Well, there you have it. And look, Vance was right. Okay? There's nuance to it. But the bigger problem is why he was moved on. We've got so much to get to. This says who? You know what I mean? Like, what is the schedule here? So you have a list of topics? That's not what it's about. It's about how the American people can access these two men and the two theories and the narratives. And you got to let them have their speak, because now you created a story where you're the problem.
Somebody wrote perfectly up under here. Chris Cuomo gets it. When the moderators act like activists, the truth doesn't stand a chance. JD Vance wasn't just right. He was exposing the uncomfortable facts by the media desperately trying to bury it. America sees through the spin. Yes, man, we see that the Democrats are, getting really extreme with their approaches these days. And then on top of that, the one thing that I enjoyed the most was the fact that, he had to remind them of their rules. He like, look, man, I thought the rules coming into this was going to be that no fact checking this here, but since we doing so, let me go ahead and give you know what I mean? Come on, bro. Trump definitely picked the right guy. I ain't gonna lie. I thought I wasn't gonna like JD Vance. Let me keep it real with y'all. But before we start playing a couple Tim Walz's replies and all that, we're going to play JD Vance's full closing statement. And I think every American needs to see this before they vote.
Well, I want to thank Governor Walz, you folks at CBS, and of course the American people for tuning in this evening. And one of the issues we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night and because money was often very tight. And I believe, as a person who wants to be your next vice president, that we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks to Kamala Harris's energy policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala Harris's policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that, too, has gotten harder with because of Kamala Harris's policies. Now, I've been in politics long enough to do what Kamala Harris does when she stands before the American people and says that on day one, she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. And whether you vote for me or vote for Tim Walz, I just want to say I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you and good night.
Senator Vance, thank you.
What an incredible That was an incredible way to wrap that up. You know what I'm saying? That was definitely an incredible finish on his part. It's time to go ahead and transition into listening to some Tim Walz, though. As I promised, man. Yeah, I didn't tell you how much, though. You know what I'm saying? Of course, I'm not trying to report anything biased. I'm just giving you guys my honest assessment of this debate. Y'all obviously know I'm a Trump Vance supporter. Woo, woo, woo. But let's go ahead and start letting Tim Walz speak for himself. Y'all, he just lost the election, in my opinion. Ain't no covering this fumble up. I'm gonna just keep it real. It's too bad.
Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of 89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything, many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID. And I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community. And then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Not only that, Tim Walz just admitted he's a liar on national TV. Shout out to Benny Johnson. He says it is the single most awkward moment in American debate history. Just watch.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Thank you, Governor.
Yeah. He was being asked why he lied about being in Hong Kong during the, I don't want to mess it up. I'll just say Square Massacre. I know it's a word with a T. You know, y'all, look, you've been watching my channel long enough to know, okay? But he says he grew up in a small town, Nebraska, where he rode his bikes with his buddies. I don't know what to believe from these people. I really don't. J.D. Vance, bro, he was a gangster. I'm just saying, he rolled up in that thing, you know what I'm saying? It was like, woo, woo, woo. You feel me? Yeah, he lost that debate. Tim Walz, that is. America, November is right around the corner.